All right, guys, we are live in healthcare digital marketing. I am incredibly excited to bring to you guys someone we've had on before, a dear friend of Alex and I's, one of the leading physical therapy or physiotherapy business coaches and owners in his time, Mr. John Davie. John, I'm so excited to have you in the group.
Wonderful to be here, buddy. Always lovely to have a chat, especially with your group. Share a bit of wisdom if we can, bit of insight. Be great.
I love having you on, John, and I apologize. I just got back from working out, so I'm a little out of breath, but I promise I'll get my act together here over the next minute or two. So excited.
Will, I thought you had got bigger, since I've seen you last. It's a bit frightening, man.
I don't know, John. I don't know that I'll take that as a compliment coming from a former world water polo player who, if anybody's ever seen water polo players, those guys are ripped. I mean, like 5% body fat, incredible shape, which, John, I don't think a lot of people probably know about you, that you were a world-class athlete in your youth. Do you want to talk about that for a second? I think a lot of people don't know that about you.
Sure, in my youth, it was what I lived for.
Yeah.
I just love being an athlete. I mean, I'm a Kiwi, New Zealander, and I was raised in a sports mad family. In fact, if anyone knows Kiwis, they know rugby's number one. Well, it wasn't our household. I played rugby, but I played water polo was my real passion.
Yeah.
And my dad used to say in the order of priorities, there's rugby, oxygen, family. And so we were in this crazy family where, sport really ruled the roost. And I fell in love with water polo. And played it. I played internationally for about 17 years. Wow. I was a schoolboy, so my nickname with all my old pals was schoolboy because I was still at school when I started playing. And I ended up retiring when one of the new guys in the team, the coach, asked me to take him under his wing, and he said, "You know what, John?" He said, "I was in nappies when you started playing, and I thought, this is my last game, man. Time to move on."
Oh, hey, that's when it's when it's time to just maybe start thinking like, hey, what's next? What's next for me when the kids that are coming and joining your team are, saying that they were in diapers when you first started. It's a sign. If you're tuning into this, whether you're watching live or on the replay, if you're listening to the podcast, obviously no need to comment. Keep focused on driving. If you're on this, though, live in the group, comment live or replay if you're live. We'd love to be able to answer some questions live. This is a great opportunity if you're on here live to ask John some very specific questions about your practice, about your business. John, I think I just as always assume people have heard of you before, but I think that we've had so many people. I think we've had up to 500 people join the group in the last 4 months. So if you don't mind just giving a little bit of background, about your time owning physio practices, how long you've been practicing and what you do now, just so people know, oh, that's who John Davie is. We got Peter Stanley's on here live. Thank you, Peter, for commenting. So John, if you don't mind just giving a little brief background.
Do you say it was Peter Stanton?
Peter Stanley. Oh, yes, Peter Stanley, yeah.
Okay. Look, I'm a Kiwi. I'm a physio. I don't work as a physio anymore. But when I first came out of physio school or physical therapy school, I went and worked for New Zealand's premier sports medicine physio. He was the head of the New Zealand physio team that went to the Olympics.
Wow. And
I worked for him pretty hard for 12 months and really dedicated myself. And after 12 months, I went and saw my dad, who was my business mentor, and said, "Hey, Dad, I want to get in my own business like you." He said, "Oh, man, that's great." He said, "Let's go and buy a practice or start one up." I went, "Oh, hold on, Dad." I said, "It's not quite like that. I want to learn to be a painter and paper hanger like you and take over your business when you retire." And he nearly gave me an uppercut. He was pretty unhappy about the whole scenario. And he said, "What's the deal?" I said, "Dad, I've looked at all the physios in New Zealand and they are crazy. They work ridiculous hours. None of them make the money that you do in your business as a painter. None of them have holiday houses like you. They don't drive cars like you. They don't go on holidays like you do. They don't take their wives away for 4 or 5 weeks a year overseas. They work frantic hours. And, I've just got married. I don't want that for my family." And Dad said, "Well, okay, that's a bit of an eye-opener." He said, "Let's do this. let's put a business plan together in the next 12 months. And every time I travel overseas to play water polo, spend an extra week and go and find what the best of the best are doing, study them, come back and do a business plan. Now, I just want to put this in place. Often the best of the best, those businesses which are really rumbling, are really open to sharing. It's those businesses that are really struggling. They like to embarrass where they're at and they never share. It's just like, it's mine, it's mine. You know, it's like my precious, keep away. But, you know, the big businesses were open to sharing. And after 12 months, Dad and I put together this business plan. And we said, look, we think we can make this work. And so we put it in place. And 12 months later, we were New Zealand's biggest practice. And 3 years later, we were twice as big as anything else in New Zealand and Australia. And I'll never forget this when we were walking out of an old-time fan reunion. And one of my old uncles was there. And I hadn't seen him for ages. And he said to Dad, he said, oh, so John's the physio in the family. And Dad looked at him and said, oh, no, John's the businessman, pause, who happens to be a physio. Man, and that really hit me around the face like a wet fish. It was like, man, that's right. You know, I loved being a clinician, don't get me wrong. I loved being a clinician, but I was intrigued with the nuances of owning a physio business back then. Absolutely intrigued. And I guess that was part of my passion as a water polo player. There's a good mate of mine in America called Andy Takata, who was a referee when I was playing in Santa Barbara. And I blew my shoulder out, blew my rotator cuff. And it looked like that was the end of my career at that stage. It wasn't, but it looked like it. And Andy said, go and put all your passion from sport into business, John, and you'll have a blast. I didn't understand what he said, what he meant, until that moment when my dad said, John's a businessman who happens to be a physio. And man, it was from that point on, I actually lifted our game. I was determined to find out what are all the nuances that really make a business hum, because having a business that really, really pumps was quite exciting. The atmosphere was great. The income was great. The lifestyle was great. You know, my colleagues didn't have the same lifestyle or income that we had. And I thought, this is crazy. There's enough work for everyone to do that. And so I coined the phrase, the science of physiotherapy business back then, because I used to study it. And we did that for some time until I got ill. I had a reactive arthritic condition, which is still here with me. And so we sold our business. I just wasn't in a space to keep it. So we sold it and pretty much retired. And then I got bored. No, my wife got bored with me being retired and said, go and do something else. And I was like, what do I love to do? Well, I love physio. I can't be a physio again. I've had a shoulder replacement and a whole bunch of other joints. It was like, that wasn't going to be the case. Go back and be a business owner of physio. And I thought, no, I didn't want to do that. I thought I'll start coaching some physios and some businesses. So I started coaching some businesses on business and thought, well, I don't like this. The only businesses I like coaching are physios. And so about 15 years ago, we morphed into just coaching physio businesses. And initially, well, it was coaching a few buddies. And then it sort of more and more people asked. And so I got caught into a trap, which was doing a lot of coaching one-on-one. And then I thought, man, we've made some huge differences in some businesses. You know, we've transformed some businesses, but we've transformed some families' lifestyle. And that was really empowering to me, seeing that type of change. And so it was like, well, how can I do this to more people? How can I help more people in our industry rather than me get caught up in the nuts and bolts of helping them one-on-one? And so we started Physio Business Growth with the whole objective of helping more, helping as much as we can. Just because I love this profession. It's a great profession. It's something I tell people it's one of the most rewarding professions to be in. However, we're nowhere near remunerated for the good work that we do. And I guess my ambition in life is to help change that.
Yeah.
And I try to clarify one thing here. I had a heart problem. I was really close. And then I had back surgery, then I had shoulder replacement and a hip replacement. It was like, at every stage, it was like, man, do we just retire? You know, just travel around, swim, paddleboard, lie on the beach, read books. And my wife said, hey, we've been there, done that. You drove me nuts. She said, what would you do if you retired? And I thought, I'd probably do this for free because I love it. And so, you know, and that's the reason, as you know, over this last month, we've been producing an awful lot of good content for free to our world market base. And why? It's because, man, right now is a time like ever that we need to look about who we are, where we're positioned, where we're going, and what we can do to move forward. So,
yeah.
Voila.
Hey, well, I appreciate it because I learned something new. I learned, one, I learned that even the most patient woman in the world, Mary, can get tired of John, which is something, because Mary is one of the nicest, kindest, most patient human beings out there. So I learned that. I think what stuck out to me the most there, and I would love to ask everyone who's watching live or if you're watching on the replay, John said something that resonated with me, which is, John, you said, you know, your dad actually pointed out that you're a businessman who happens to be a physio, not the physio who owns a business. And I would love to ask you right now, if you're watching this, if you're on the podcast listening, what do you feel more like? Do you feel more of a physio who owns a business, or do you feel like a business owner who happens to be a physio? And if you're like, oh, they're the same things, I really want you to think about it. Do you have your own job as a physio? We're going to talk about this with John today because it's really important. Are you a physio who owns a business, but really you're just self-employed for yourself in a job that you've created with a business? Or do you own a business and you happen to be a physio that serves the business that you work in? Because I think they're really huge. And I guess, John, I kind of want to start there with you. There are a lot of people right now who've been affected by the COVID situation that's going on. And the economic sort of, fallout from that. I think there are a lot of people who are wondering, should I ever start a job based on this, or start a business based on this happening? Or I was in business for maybe a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and I didn't realize how fragile it was and how much was at stake and how much really I was at risk. And now I'm seeing it, and am I cut out for this? And I guess you are working with people all over the world. For context, guys, John is based in Australia, but has worked tirelessly with people, physio business owners here in the States, South Africa, Europe, Africa, or other parts of Africa, Oceania. Like, he has been everywhere working with people all over the world. It's fascinating. If you ever get a chance to talk with John, it's some of the most eye-opening insight you will ever get when it comes to physio. It's why we recommend John so much, why Alex and I are huge fans of John. We bring him on. Sorry, John, I got distracted for a second. For anyone who is out there right now who's wondering, John, I don't know if I'm a physio who owns a business or if I'm a business owner who owns a physio. How do you help someone work through that? Help them sort of decide, figure out, where are they in that journey?
It's look, this is one of the toughest things for people to get their head around. And if anyone is an avid reader, or love podcasts, Brené Brown talks a lot about shame. And physios are really bright. We have to be bright to get into physio school or physical therapy school, right? So we're bright, and don't even will tell you different. We're bright. We're clinically very astute. We spend all the time doing clinical stuff, and then we look around. And we go, we're not making the money that we should be. My business is not doing what I envisaged when I first got involved, and people feel a bit of shame about that, and they close the doors. And that's the wrong thing to do. It's actually time to open the doors. And one of the things that I started studying as looking at, what makes great businesses. When I spent four years studying hard, all the best practices that I could find globally, right through Europe, North America, Australia, New Zealand. And all the great businesses had great leadership at the front, at the helm. And when you talk to them, they were absolutely certain about what they wanted to achieve and why they got into business. And it stopped them going off on tangents. And most people, when they start off in business, especially like a physio business, the tangent that they go off on is they stop building a business and they go off on an active income. And they go, I need to make that money right now. I need to pull that money in right now. And so they end up with this scenario that it's an active income that they've got. They actually own a job and they work for this nutcase. You know, this nutcase won't pay them holiday pay, sick pay, flogs them, makes them turn up on the weekend, doesn't give them overtime. And they think, I'm getting into business to have more control over my life. Well, that's an oxymoron. You know, they end up the opposite. The biggest transition is understanding what's the end point and paying the price early to get to the end point. Paying the price from the word go. Don't take your eyes off what you need to do to get to the end point. You know, if you want to be an elite water polo player, hey, play water polo, study water polo. Don't get all of a sudden, I really love weight training. You start doing bodybuilding on the side. You'll never be a great bodybuilder or a great water polo player if your mind's split. Every athlete knows that. And yet what we do, and because we're not trained in this, is I'm going to have a business, but I'm going to rush off on the side. My active income is so important right now. I'll leave these business things to later. And I'll get around to it, and it never happens. And then we become really focused on what we're taught is if I'm a better clinician, I'll have a better business. And I work with some magnificent, capital M, clinicians around the world whose businesses are lousy. And I also work with some really stunning businesses whose the heads are no longer clinicians at all. Yeah. And their businesses are boom, you know. And some of the smaller businesses look at them and go, yeah, but they're not a clinician. Yeah, they've got a business. You can have both. And I just want to clarify this. If your ambition is I want to be a great clinician, I want to work really long hours, and I don't really care about making much money, I'm happy to struggle. Well, maybe you're doing the right thing. Keep doing what you're doing. But if your ambition is hey, I want to be able to serve my community to the max, and I actually believe you're selfish if you have the ability to serve your community, but look, I'm just going to be a clinician in my own right. I'm not going to share my skills. I'm not going to leverage my skills. I'm not going to teach other people what I do. I'm just going to be insular. I actually think that's quite a selfish thing to do. You know, we have this great profession, and we're nowhere near saturated in our communities like it should be. We should own physical therapy, you know. Instead, right now, we're giving it away to, personal trainers here, acupuncturists over here, kinesiologists over here, exercise physiologists over here. We should own this area. Yeah,
it's true.
I don't know if I answered that question, man. I got on a tangent.
No, I love it. I think you made some really great points that, one, you just really have to ask yourself, what is it that you really, really want? And this is something that you helped Alex and I realize, whether you even know it or not, John, was really figuring out what is it that you want personally. And if you're right, if you want to work 50, 60, 80 hours a week and work really hard and just treat patients, and you don't worry, you're not worried about getting remunerated, which, by the way, for all of us with low vocabulary here in America, that means make more money. I didn't know that for the first time when John said remunerated with our low grammar here and low English, that if that's what you want to do, then yeah, maybe you are following the right path. But I think what we've seen time and time again, John, is people truly deep down, they want more impact and they want more time with the people that they love. And it's really hard to get more time with the people that you love when I'm sure all physios love their patients. Well, maybe not all of them, most of their patients, but you can't have both. You can't have all of your time with your patients. You can't have all of your time with your family. And what we see time and time again is people are coming to us, Alex and I, because they want more time. And the way that you do that is you own a business that gives you time back. And with that in mind, I'd be really curious what you're seeing right now. We've got physio business owners from all over the US, all over Canada. We've got some, and I was talking to a guy in Ireland, actually connected to you today, John, who was saying that it was really interesting, saying Pilates businesses are starting to bring in physios and trying to take over that way. And it's like, wow, I didn't know that was a thing. And what do you see across the globe? how physio businesses are reacting, just from what you're seeing, how they're reacting, not what you would do for them, but just how you're seeing them react across the globe.
Hey man, before I answer that question, I just want to give people a definition of what I believe a business is. You know, for physio, right?
Yeah.
I believe the ideal business is a business that operates independently from the owner needing to be present, that delivers high quality, gold standard services at every patient touch point, and produces an optimized profit which grows every quarter. And the biggest thing about that is operates independently from the practice owner needing to be there, and gold standard at every touch point. And a lot of physios end up with not a physio business, they end up with a physio rental business. What I mean by that is they start out and they start getting more and more clients than what they can look after because they're really good at doing what they're doing. And so they hire somebody else, but they hire someone else and put them in a room and said, hey, look, go ahead and treat them. And that person's got full autonomy to treat them any way that they want. They don't know what's going on behind closed doors. And they think, I've got a business. No, you're renting out a room space. You might have them on a contract that you're making money. You might be employing them, but it's still renting out a room space because not everyone's operating to the same philosophy. Not everyone has agreed, hey, these are the gold standard services that this facility is going to deliver. And these are non-negotiable. Because if you in that room go and screw up, you go and do something totally wrong, it doesn't come and bite you on the backside, it bites this business on the backside, which bites me. So it's a Russian roulette gamble by having these rental scenarios and thinking, I've got a physio business. No, you've got a physio rental scenario. A business is where everyone is aligned, everything is synergistic in its way of its flow. Everybody knows what's going on at every patient touch point because there's an agreed set standards of this is what we deem as gold standard from a customer service perspective, our clinical perspective, and our progressions going forward. That's a business.
Love it.
Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. I think that's the biggest thing. So if you're listening to this right now, whether you're watching live on the replay, if you're listening to this on the podcast, I want you to sit there and ask yourself, could this business operate without me? First, can it even operate without you? Second, could it operate without you with gold standard, high quality service at every touch point? So if I'm sitting here being honest, Alex and I's business can't run without us. So Alex and I have to look like what, so this isn't so I'm sitting here listening just as well as a student from John. This is why I love to bring John on. He's been through the whole gambit of starting out on his own, building an entire business, building a true business that runs without him. And so I'm sitting here thinking too, like taking notes mentally, like we've got to figure out how do we move out of a job into having a business that can run without us. So I think that's very clear, John. I think it's super important that it's okay if you're not there yet, by the way, guys, but to start thinking mentally, how do I start moving towards that as a goal to do that? So John, anything else on that?
No, it's just the biggest transition is this headspace here.
Yeah,
that's it. It's headspace is first and foremost.
So speaking of headspace, which right now I think is normally is a pretty vulnerable space. We've got throw in a sort of world pandemic and economic sort of uncertainty. How have you seen physio businesses across the globe responding? And maybe I'd ask this: what have you seen the ones who are surviving and thriving during this responding versus ones who are maybe not on the other side of that, and how are they responding?
Okay, that's man. Because we're in 31 countries, we see a lot what's going on. Yeah. And you guys in the States, parts of the US like New York, absolutely hammered. But other parts of it are going, oh really? There's something going on. And yet we were in Malta when the pandemic hit Italy at its peak, and we were stuck in a hotel room for several days, pretty much in lockdown, waiting to try and get a flight out. And all we had on was the Italian news, was the only thing that was left on the TV. And I tell you, it was frightening, man. It was absolutely sobering. It was a war zone. Seeing people dying in car parks because they can't get in the hospital, seeing people being carried out to trucks without a coffin, just in a body bag, because there were no coffins left. They're all gone. You know, parts of the world haven't been hit like that. Those parts that have, you know, my heart just bleeds for it. It's just frightening. This pandemic is something we've never ever had in our lifetime. Probably the Spanish flu way back when, you know, we weren't as sophisticated as we are right now. And so we've seen some people continue on like, hey, really, there's something going on. Some countries, other countries in lockdown, like New Zealand is now in its 5th week of total lockdown. Australia here, we're in lockdown, I think they call it 3. So only essential services are open, and physios are one of those. And so we're seeing like 50% reduction, 70% reduction in some practices. And then in some areas, they've had to close. Like the higher socioeconomic areas have managed to stay open. Some of those in a lower socioeconomic area or out in the suburbs, you know, people aren't out on the streets at all. And so they just can't survive. They've had to close down. And we've seen huge variations in how people have reacted. And it's understandable because no one's ever been through this before. But I think going back on the principles of why we're here is really important during this time. And holding up to your internal ethics, because we've seen people do really crazy, uncharacteristic things that they'd never do unless they're under huge stress. Like really unethical, but they can justify it in their own rights things, or they take a massive step back and, you know, hey, I need to make in money. I'm going to let all my staff go and I'm just going to work 12, 14, 16 hours a day because I need the money. Whereas those that are proactive are seeing this as a stance that, hey, my culture is really important. Looking after my team is really important. I'm going to not treat any patients. My staff are going to treat all my patients. And I'm going to use this time to work on my business, not in my business. I'm going to work on my business right now to burst on out. And I think the closest thing that I've seen to economic factors like this was 11 years ago in New Zealand. New Zealand has a centralized health insurance scenario called ACC, which is a compulsory health insurance program in New Zealand, government-owned. And 11 years ago, they made some legislative changes, which meant that a lot of things that were claimable on physio were no longer claimable. And in 12 months' time, there was a 51% reduction in physio volume around the nation.
Wow.
Now, a lot of companies collapsed, couldn't survive. However, there were some that thrived, absolutely boomed out of this because they took a step back and they looked where they're at and go, man, business world's changed. I need to change with it. What do I need to do to put in place to actually be a proactive business to move forward? Or am I just going to panic and I'm going to drop some staff and I'm going to be the person that treats everyone? People that did that are still in that scenario. However, those that stood back and said, it's time to grow, it's time to refashion myself, the other ones that went forward. And I think right now we have I won't say an opportunity because I don't think that's the right word to use in this really horrific time that we're in. However, this is a place and time for us as business leaders to go, my culture is I call culture the exponential factor when it comes to growth. Culture is really important. Part of that's looking after my team. If I'm panicking, my team are panicking. I've got to be the calm head. I've got to help my team out in this scenario, take a step back and do all the things that I need to do to make my business really accelerate forward out of this. And I guess that's why we put together this free 30-day challenge, 30 days of significant marketing material to burst forward out of this, because this time will end. And when it ends, you should be asking yourself, when it ends, am I going to start all over again? And I've had a number of people say, John, I just don't have the energy to start again. I don't know what to do. Am I going to start again? Or am I going to start a whole new business, which is a physiotherapy or physical therapy business, not a job? And so there's different skills I need to learn. There's different things I need to put in place. Keep the long game, and go forward. So massive changes around the world from the perspective of how people are reacting to the changes.
Hmm.
And I'm really excited to see some people going, you know what? It's time for me to be working on my business instead of in it. And they're actually enjoying it, and they can see, man, imagine if I keep on doing this and putting these things in place, what's this going to do long term? It's going to be so cool. So.
Yeah. It's so interesting to get your perspective, because I think so many of us get caught up in our tiny little bubble of our business and looking at the outside, and you have the incredible perspective of being, your head above, being able to look out at everybody else and what they're doing, and you don't have to be insular. And so you're able to bring such an amazing perspective and point of view. So I'm just grateful to have you here. And I guess my natural question would be, okay, John, I'm a business owner, and let's say I own a physio practice, and I'm going to take a step back, but I've been putting off 900 things that I should have been doing. What are some things that I should be focusing on right now? That or what would you recommend would be maybe just a couple of things that will really move the needle forward more than, I'm sure I could justify in my mind 898 out of the 900 things could help me, but obviously I'd rather maximize my time and energy. Where do you think that people could put their energy, these physio business owners should put their energy into first and foremost?
Pre-pandemic, I'll tell you how we operated. We have 8 segments of the physio business growth wheel, and they're split into 4 components, the 4 C's. And those 4 C's are culture, commercial requirements, clinical skills, and customer service. And we always talk about culture is the exponential factor. Success is C plus C plus C to the power of C. Culture is that powerful. Man, right now, if there's anything going on and you have staff, your number one priority right now should be making sure your staff are good, making sure your staff are safe, making sure they appreciate what they have and what they're going to come to. Number one. So don't go and do things, get busy being busy, and forget the most important asset that you have, which is your team. And I like to call them your team members rather than staff members, because together we should be growing. These are our standards. These are what we're doing put together. And then normally what I would do is I would work with a business and go, your business is basically, you've got all these patients coming through the door and they drop into a funnel. And as they go through the funnel, they drip out to your business bucket at the bottom. And most people's business bucket have got all these holes in it. And the first thing you should do is go and plug all the holes in your business bucket, and then do a whole bunch of marketing to drive more patients in and fill your bucket up. And then go and get a bigger bucket. And most businesses around the world don't want to hear that. Most of them go, man, just drive more people into my business. And, with some people, it's like, drive more people into my business and I'm going to give them a great service, but my staff, I don't know what's going on. They got full autonomy, but I'm sure they do a good job. I hope they do a good job, and hope to really pour strategy when it comes to business. So I would first of all encourage people not to do that, to fix the holes in their bucket. Right now, the biggest hole in people's bucket is, what is it that they want to create for them and their family going forward? The number one thing. What is it that you want to end up with in 5 years' time?
So defining a goal is a number.
Defining, okay. What do you want out of your business? And
it's a number one hole in the bucket.
Yeah. If this is what I want to achieve in life, and my business can only get me a tiny bit of that, you've either got to adjust your business or go and get a different line of income. Change what you're doing. Yeah. It's one of the two. And if you want to change your business, you've got to change how you think about your business first of all. And I tell people, Michael Phelps, my favorite sportsman of all time, didn't stand on the Olympic platform, after earning his 100th gold medal and gone, man, I'm so surprised. I just went out for a swim one morning and look what happened. Some physios are like that. Well, obviously, they go out and they, I'm just going to work. There's no set plan in place long term. And I want to put this to everyone that's listening. Do you think it's possible in 3 years' time that a new graduate, a newly graduated physio or physical therapy is going to appear on the scenes and in 3 years' time is going to make a significant impact? Is that possible? Well, the answer is yes. Absolutely possible. We were one of that. The answer, absolutely yes. What's stopping you being that person? Because you know more right now than any new graduate coming out. The difference is some new graduates coming out don't have baggage. And we're carrying baggage with us. I'm not worthy. Yeah, but. We'll get your butt out of the way. Start with the defining what is it you want to achieve, like any elite athlete, for you and your family. Because then it's in a scenario. I'll talk about a real life scenario of someone that we worked with in the Northern Hemisphere. They were in Europe, and they had one staff member that really was underperforming, incredibly underperforming. And I said, how can you keep this chap on? He goes, well, look, I was best man at his wedding. He was best man at my wedding. Our family's real good. I said, you need to go home to your wife and tell your wife that you're not going to send your children to private school, and we're not going to get the house remodeled, because it's really important that we keep such and such in his job. And his job is more important than our kids going to private school or getting the house remodeled. I hope that's okay. He said, I can't tell her that. I said, well, then you're not telling her the truth, you know? So we need to know what our end point is first and foremost. And then once we know that, right now, you know, sometimes there's these holes in the bucket that need to be plugged. Right now, our biggest focus should be preparing our marketing flow, because when we bounce out of this, our community are going to want us more than ever before. Create all the marketing stuff that we need and then plug the holes. Secondary. Don't try and plug all the holes now. The only hole to plug is where do you want to go? Create the marketing flow. Then we can go and plug all the rest.
Love it. I love it. Interesting, right? I think it's first off, you never want to get between a woman and remodeling her house. That's number one lesson. Don't want to get in. I'm not married, and I can tell you that already. I've watched enough HGTV here in the States. It's like home garden television where you like remodel houses. Very, very, very conscious of that. All jokes aside, I think it's, you know, most people want to look to what's the one little skill I gotta learn, this one technical thing, and
the golden bullet.
Yep. It's so great to hear someone who's been there. And sometimes I think we need that perspective of, for most of us, we haven't even clearly defined the goal that we're going after. How can you even, doesn't matter the tactic that you're using if you're not even on the right path of where you're trying to go. So I really appreciate that, that perspective, John. I think, how do you help someone, you know, really, this could be a super deep question. I think there are a lot of people maybe questioning what their goals are right now, or where this is going. I know as a sportsman, you've faced a lot of adversity in your time, a lot of challenging times, a lot of, I'm sure, failure, a lot of doubt, a lot of injury. You know, do you come back for another year? There's probably a lot of people with those same questions, same doubts, just applied to maybe business in this case. How do you help someone? What do you recommend to someone, or advice do you have for someone who's maybe in that valley right now mentally of, do I bounce back? Do I just give up and get a job? Do I keep going? Yeah, I think it's probably a real thing. Most people don't want to talk about, but I think there's probably a lot of people who just like, wow, this was maybe more than I thought. Do I do this? What advice do you have for anyone who's in that situation?
Well, and look, there's more people in that situation than ever before. And, you know, and it's really easy to say, oh, look, get back out in the saddle, you know, give yourself an uppercut. And look, that's really bad advice. Right now is a good time. You know, there will be some people that have had a business, owned a job, and in reality, they don't want to own a job anymore. And they don't want to go and build a business. They just want to go and work for someone else. Look, that's fine. absolutely fine, but make it really crystal clear, because you don't want to be down the track working for somebody else and going, you know what, you've got regret. And the regret normally is because you haven't really defined what it is you want to go and chase. And so, when people are in this dark patch, sometimes it's okay to take a breather and just put things in perspective.
Yeah.
And, I'm surrounded with sports quotes here. I've got John Wooden's Pyramid of Success sitting on my wall. Success is peace of mind, which is a direct result of self-satisfaction and knowing you did the best that you are capable of and being all that you can be. There's a second phrase of that, which is not there, and only you can be the judge of that. And I think that is really important. It's like, I start out with someone else and someone else is very successful in a different area than I am. And you start beating yourself up. As long as you're doing the best that you can based on where you have come from and your life skills, hey, be satisfied with that. It's one step at a time. Don't judge yourself against other people, because they may have come from a totally different place. And look, it may look really good and solid now, but it might be fragile underneath, and the whole thing might crash down because it's built on something different. You don't know what's going on behind closed doors within a marriage, let alone in a business. And so, take a breath and go, what is it that would satisfy me? Because we only get one, I believe we only get one shot at this. What is it that I would go, okay, I'm successful because I'm self-satisfied with my effort and where I'm going. And if you can sit back and do that, great. However, if you're in a position to go, man, I want more, doing what I was doing this is a time that's made me reflect. I want more. I want more income. And that's a swear word for many physios. I want more money. Don't you swear at me.
How dare you, John?
I want a better lifestyle. I want to make a greater, and to do that, you have to make a greater contribution to your community. That's the thing. So that's the unselfish thing. If we're making a greater contribution, we get remunerated. We make more money because of our contribution. If we're not making the money that we want, we're probably not making the contribution that we need to make. And so therefore, we need to sit back. If we want a better lifestyle, make a bigger contribution. Can't make a great contribution locked in a little room treating patients one after the other. That's selfish. This is now time to think, okay, man, I can bounce out of that. I can bounce out of that. Might need some help. That's the key. And physios, in Rene Brown's comments, shame, we don't go and ask for help. All our patients come to us for help. Clinically, we need to go and ask for help at times. And there's a saying, readers are leaders. There's some fantastic books to read. The Culture Code by Daniel Coyle, Legacy by James Kerr, Leadership by John Maxwell, The E-Myth. There's some great books out there that I think Michael Gerber wrote, The E-Myth. Some great books that you really should get stuck into because they make a difference to how we think. And right now, guys, please, please, please take time to think, what do I want for my future, my family's future? How do I want to serve my community more? And then how do I leverage my skill set? Or, you know what? I'm tired. I've had enough. I'm going to go work for someone else. Both of those scenarios are fine based on who you are and where you've come from. Don't let anyone else judge you.
Oh, man. I love that. I love that last phrase. Don't let anyone else judge you. And John, I want to just say thank you. And obviously we're going to have you back and can't stress to people enough. Just if you ever get a chance to listen to John, first off, you need to go jump in the Grow Your Physio Business Facebook group. I will make a separate post and I'll put it on there so people can go join. You have to go do it. John's been in on the second half now of a free 30-day free session training and tons of marketing advice, tons of marketing help, business help. If you're not in the Grow Your Physio Business Facebook group, you are doing yourself a massive disservice. You're missing out on tons of free content. It's there every single day. John and John's friend, Michael, who's also a physio in the UK, was doing telehealth. You guys, there's tons of incredible content over there. I want to push you over there. John, I want to say thank you, because obviously we could talk for days, but we'll cap it here. And I just want to say thank you for your time, your energy, and your wisdom.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate having you on. And look, talking about people making an impact on the market, you and Alex made a decision what you wanted, and you went down that road, which is huge kudos for you, because you could have stayed stuck treating and being unhappy. And you guys are actually now contributing to our profession, and we need more people contributing to our wonderful profession. And you know, there aren't people say, oh, you've got competitors out there. Man, we need so much work done globally in our profession. There are no competitors. We need more people helping us out, man, grow, and celebrating everyone that's helping everyone else out grow, because we need to make a difference. So, hey, well, thanks, buddy. Appreciate you.
Well, thank you for the kind words, John. I think what a world it would be if we all had business apprenticeships. Like, we all had to go study under someone who is successful. What a concept. That'd be amazing. Unfortunately, that doesn't exist. So you've got to go find those people and invest in those people, whether that's financially or your time. You've got to go learn from people who've been there, who've done it. You can go your own route. There's nothing wrong with it. Just why make all the same mistakes when you can learn from people who've paved the way ahead of time. And yeah, I just want to say thank you, John, and for this. And what's really cool, I think about what you just said there, and I take that to heart, and I'm really grateful for the compliment, is if I were to go back into a clinic now, I would only go with the mindset of I'm going to own a physio clinic rather than I'm going to go create a job for myself in a physio clinic. I mean, either would be fine. I just think that's how I would go now. My brain is thinking differently of, I could impact so many more people if I could hire 5 physios to treat people, versus I can only handle so many by myself if I'm the only one there. And so I just want to say thank you for that perspective. Guys, go join the Grow Your Physio Business Facebook group. I will also have a link to it. I'll put a link to it in the group, and we'll catch you guys on the next episode if you're listening on the podcast. John, I'll talk to you in a little bit.
Thanks, buddy. God bless you, man.
Bye,
Cheers.
guys.